Peace and Black Power, family. This is your brother sa.neter, Chicago. The first thought that may come to mind when you hear the name of the infamous city is civil war. Civil war amongst black men and women. Civil war and senseless murders. However, upon my travels, there I saw nothing but the outpouring of rich black culture and brotherly love. I was invited there by the world-renowned international ambassador and prime minister of Dimona, Prince Asiel, and his honorable yet humble son, the one and only Crown Prince Nasik Malik Yusuf, and they pampered and accommodated me in every way imaginable. My Hebrew Israelite family spared no expense and insisted on nothing less than excellence when it came to my comfort during my stay. When I tell you my eyes were open to the true Hebrew Israelites, I do not mean it like you hear it said from these camps on their social media Israelites who spread hatred and division, who teach hatred for our continental African people who are living in the motherland. When I saw the real Hebrew Israelites, I do not mean the ones who stand on busy street corners attacking, harassing, and condemning the unsuspecting, non-believing black people who pass them by while they shove signs of the 12-tribe chart into their innocent faces. When I say the real Israelites, I do not mean the ones who demean our sisters and take advantage of our women while exploiting and oppressing them. No, those are not the real Hebrew Israelites. Not at all. I finally had the chance to see who the real black Hebrew Israelites are. Once I stepped foot into the amazing breathtaking home of these true Torah believers and black revolutionaries, my eyes were open. I was blessed to sit in the house of Prince Asiel himself as an honored guest of the royal Prince Asiel and his remarkable parents, Crown Prince Nasik Malik Yusuf. I was treated none less than VIP. Actually, even saying that I was treated like a VIP is an understatement. The true hospitality and love I received from these Torah followers cannot fully be expressed in words. I sat with black kings, black princes, black teachers, and black revolutionaries. I felt like I was a long-awaited royal family member returning to the palace. These are the brothers and families who stand in unity with blacks despite the lines of religion. These are the Hebrews who put black solidarity first, not religion first. And I am honored to have called them a part of the House of Consciousness family. I say thank you, Prince Asiel, and thank you, Crown Prince Yusuf. You are my new Israelite family in Chicago. Peace and Black Power. All right, peace and Black Power family. Welcome to another sa.neter TV House of Consciousness production. You already know what it is. We are here in the beautiful home of Prince Asiel. This is the family right here that gets me out in Chicago for the first time. A lot of people been trying to get me out of here, and I ain't been coming out through to a lot of stuff that be going on. But the Prince called, I'm here. You know what I'm saying? So I want to say, how you doing, sir?
Extraordinary.
All right, beautiful. What I do?
The importance of what you shared with me is all of the men that you named impacted my life and my development. I first met Minister Khaled when he came from Uganda to Israel. He had just met with President Idi Amin, and he came and he told me about his meeting with the president and that he had told him about the work that we were doing in Israel. And he made a promise to him that he would come and get firsthand information from those of us who were in Israel. Because nobody really understood why we were in Israel. because everybody associated the Creator with religion rather than the creative nationalism that we went to Israel to do. And so when I realized, as I was saying to you earlier, that my commitment was to making sure your generation would skip the experiences of pain, not of growing up, but of trying to be the man that you were destined to be. What you call prison, I call the university. I was facing 365 years in federal prison. I had a 69-count indictment. I was transferred from Chicago to Washington, D.C., and I was the first one that was charged with RICO and RICO conspiracy for a non-criminal case. I later changed it from a revolutionary to an evolutionary, which is what I want to introduce you as, so that the people will know your continual growth is not revolutionary, it's evolutionary. Because you're that new, not only black man, you're that new man that I want to prove that would come out of this darkness into the great light of understanding. And so Brother Khaled and I became not only the best of friends, I spent time with him out there in California. I spent time with him in the Nation of Islam. I was right there when he was right at the minister's side rebuilding. I was right there with Brother Khaled as we traveled across America from Chicago to California. I was out in California with him in the beginning of the Bloods and the Crips. So we had not only a personal relationship, but a brotherhood that transcended the Nation of Islam or the Hebrew Israelite nation. It was a bond of black men who wanted a better world and a better life for their people. And our people was not just black people, even though at the time we didn't know no difference between anybody else. It was about all men and women who were positive in their approach to developing what you were doing for the personal family, providing food, clothing, and shelter, but most of all, a new direction. And so I want to thank you, Brother sa.neter, for hearing the voice of truth, whether it be through Brother Khaled, whether it be through Brother Minister Louis Farrakhan, or any of the other men and women that inspired you over the years to be out there on Front Street. Because when I came to Harlem in 1972, I stayed in the projects down in the Lower East Side and began to study at the feet of John Henry Clark. I stayed with him and his household. I studied with his good friend, the Dr. Ben Yohanan, who was from Ethiopia, who began to share his experiences with me. I met the head of the Malls, Brother Kenyatta. I met the late, great preacher in Harlem from the Council of Churches. I began to move in New York and in the boroughs so that the people would know who we were and what it was that we were doing. And so the things that you've shared with me about you, I want to just add to me being a part of your life, and the work that you have done and are doing will be part of the legacy of growth and development of us as a people, so that you'll know that the work that I did and those like me did was on behalf of you and those that love you, respect you to this day. So I'm honored. So I'm honored that you have come to Chicago to visit with me. And I'm saying to the world that whenever you're in Chicago, you and your family, all you got to do is reach out for us, and you're at home.
Thank you.
Chicago belongs to us.
Thank you, sir.
But
I
not just
appreciate it.
Chicago. I went across this country from coast to coast, and then I went into Africa. I spent 50 years starting in West Africa all the way to East Africa, to Kenya, all the way from North Africa, Egypt, to South Africa when I took Mama Mandela to Israel.
Can I cut you for 1 minute?
Yes.
Coming into your home, I was nervous just to come here and sit with you, and I see how you flowing where I really could just sit back and listen to you. I don't have to have all these questions that I got. I could just sit back and listen to you and let that wellspring of knowledge and information just bless our people. So I'm going to just ask you this question, and I'm going to fall back a little bit and just let you flow, you know? And here's the question I have for you. Please take us as far back as you can before 1966 in your pilgrimage path back to Israel with the family. Who is Prince Asiel Sr. before he was named Prince Asiel Yahuda? Before your awakening, which your rightful label as your resurrection?
I got a little pamphlet down there. Do you see it?
This one?
Yes.
Okay.
And I wanted you to hold the cover.
Oh, hold the cover?
This was 1975.
Some more, I got it too.
This was 1975. I was in Chicago, and I was part of a brotherhood, Alpha Phi Alpha, the first black fraternity that started up at Ithaca, New York, at Cornell University by 7 black men who made a determination that they was going to lay an intellectual foundation for the black man, because at the time we were being lynched in America at the tune of maybe 15 a week. We was also locked up in the New York Zoo in a cage as an animal put on display. At the time, we were men that had no respect from anybody. But at that same time, there was a group of us that had decided that we was going to be those men that our people could be proud of. And so those men, 7 men, started an organization that's today went from 7 to close to 400,000 across the world, Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. And I'm proud to say that I'm one of those brothers who got grabbed at 15, 16 years old and was introduced to black men that I never knew, the lawyers, the doctors, the judges, and became part of an evolutionary group of young brothers. So it started back when I asked the question, how did we get into this mess? And from that, my mind began to search history and search the past to see where we got off at. Now, it just so happened, Brother sa.neter, I lived across the street from the messenger's brother in Chicago. His family was my best friends growing up, the Pools. And they introduced me to Islam through the messenger. And I went to the messenger's classes in the 50s and 60s and didn't know what he was doing at that time, the depth of it. And I went to Savior's Day back in the 60s. And to let you know that I didn't really know the depth of what we were doing, I just knew that that was an answer that I was looking for. And his message of the devil and God, not only did it resonate with me, but it made me understand the two powers that were vying for the souls of men and women. And that was the black man was representing God through the messenger, Elijah Muhammad, and through his servants that he had been developing. And then evil was being represented by those forces that had brought us into what they call captivity and dehumanization. And so when I began to get clarity on how we arrived at this condition, I needed to know how was that done. And that's when I began to study the spiritual books, whether it was the Quran, whether it was the Bible, whether it was the New Testament, whether it was the Old Testament. I wanted to know about God, the black man, and truth. And so, based on that, we were able to develop a foundation of study so that we would not be guessing or passing on hearsay about God, the black man, and truth. And so I wanted you to know that was my beginning as a young man, 17, 18 years old. And I've been on that journey for more than 60 years, moving around the world. And when I went into Israel, I went in with the sole purpose of lifting us up as a people. I didn't go into Israel to be Jewish. I didn't go into Israel to be religious. I went into Israel to find out about God, the truth, not religion. I wanted to know this power that we call creator, form of men and women. I needed to understand how do you connect back to that power and that force. And that's why I went to Israel. And I met a great man named Prince Shaliach. L.A. Bryant was his American name. And I met a great man named Ben Ami. And his...
Oh, go ahead.
Now you can go.
Go ahead.
You can go now.
Yeah, stop for a minute.
It stopped for me.
Yeah,
Okay.
Continue.
So what I wanted you to really understand, and the audience that you're speaking to understand, is that I'm talking to family, whoever they are around the world, through you, so that you would know the true and authentic journey of those of us that went into Israel. And I happen to have in this room one of my grandsons who was born in Israel, and his father was the son of Ben Ami. and Ben-Ami was his grandfather as well. And so we began to develop generations so that the foundation would be recorded by you for this day to begin that journey back to truth. So I want to stop there and let you continue to guide the questions
Yes.
and
Beautiful.
the direction that you want to go in.
Yes, beautiful. Before I go on with the question, I want to say I'm gonna give my brother, I'm gonna big you up, man.
Who that?
I'm talking about you, the mighty Hebrew. We call him the mighty Hebrew. Y'all probably know him by something else.
Prince Langley.
Prince, what?
We call him the mighty Hebrew.
I gave him that name like how long was that ago about?
Man, probably 15 years ago.
Yeah, you know, because he came through my hood and he was
Solo,
going in
by
and
himself.
by himself and he was going in on his white boys. But this brother loves you so much, man, because that's all he talked to me about is you. When he been trying to get me out here for a long, brother, you got to come out here and see this brother. You got to meet him, sa.neter. You got to meet him, right or wrong, brother.
Absolutely.
You know, so I just wanted to let him know the love that you have for him when you're not even in his presence. So he'll know, you know.
The mighty Hebrew emerged, but I didn't know at the time that he had also been to the university and spent 10 years there. And he took time out to study, and he had studied me so thorough that when I first began to communicate with him on his radio program out of Philadelphia, I knew then that he was the one, because that night he asked me, could he be trained as a prince? And I told him I would put him in a program that night. And I announced to the audience that he would be prince under the new Hebrew Israelite kingdom. And so to this day, we began to have a love affair that made me know that he was serious about truth and God's people. But he also talked about you and told me about you. And so even before tonight, I did my work on you too.
Powerful, brother. Yes, sir.
So
yes,
that
sir.
you would know that you're not talking to a stranger or who don't know what you've been doing and want to do and going to continue to do, because I intend, with the blessings of the eternal Spirit, to be part of your life so that what I've learned and know, that you can become one of those sons that have access to me at the very highest level.
Yes.
Because I grew. That's why I told you evolutionary. I grew beyond the titles and the limitations of the great men. What I chose to do, I asked myself about a year or so ago, why didn't Noble Drew Ali and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad communicate so that everybody would know they were going in the same direction? Why didn't Garvey and Elijah Muhammad, and why didn't, and I went down the whole list of men and women who was fighting with all their heart, soul, and might to liberate us from this darkness that we found ourselves in. And so, for me, the great journey backwards to go forward was that I discovered, brother sa.neter, that they didn't talk to each other. They talked at each other, or about each other, or around each other, but they never sat and talked. And I think one of the famous pictures of Dr. King and the messenger was when they met each other in Chicago and began to communicate. And I saw that it was important that the mighty Hebrew and his generation and your generation know that the key is what we're doing here. To talk to each other, not convince that you're wrong and I'm right, but to talk about what we found out on our journey that's absolutely verifiable, because truth is verifiable and a lie stands out by itself. And one of the things that I realized about a lie is that the universe rejects it. You don't have to do anything. Whoever represents the lie is going to be revealed. And so everybody that said that they was talking about God had no idea who God was and what God's purpose for the human being was. And that was the journey that I wanted to discover. I didn't want to be no Hebrew. I didn't want to be no Muslim. I didn't want to be no Christian. I wanted to be one who was seeking verification of what was being told to us as a people. So I just want to let you know that's foundational in this discussion.
Talk to the family about your unique bond with Dr. King as Alpha Phi Alpha and the similarities of you two being renowned black revolutionaries who have been seen to always place your people first.
A great love for Dr. King started with me recognizing and realizing that he was willing to challenge the system of institutionalized racism and was organizing black men particularly and black women so that they would have an opportunity. And the reason I say black women, it was because he connected with the great lady that started the bus boycott, and that began to promote his prominence among black people for those 300 days of not riding the bus in Alabama to break the back of segregation on public transportation. I knew then that I needed to really understand what was motivating him. Now, we always hear people say God. So we know when they saying God, they wasn't talking about God from a religious point of view. And when I realized that Dr. King had himself become a scholar about history, I knew that he went further than his father, who was just a Baptist preacher at the time, but a very powerful one at that. And so I wanted to know more about Dr. King. And when I realized that he had become part of the Brotherhood of Alpha Phi Alpha and had become a scholar, I knew that it wasn't punkish or soft to know how to read and write and to communicate effectively to the world and not just to black people. Because he wasn't a black leader, he was recognized as a world-class leader. And he wasn't talking about a black God or a black religion. He was talking about freedom and justice for all men. And that began to fashion my thinking about how I was going to deal with white men, brown men, and black men I started measuring people by truth, by the mere fact that they were speaking on truth. And as I said earlier, truth was verifiable. It don't need no witness other than the results that you say you can bring to the table. And when I saw that he could do that, I then began to meet all the men, for some reason, that was part of him. And that has enriched my life so. Whether it was Andy Young, whether it was Ralph Abernathy, whether it was Al Sampson, Reverend Al Sampson here in Chicago, who was part of his young cadre of black men that he had begun to organize, whether it was those brothers who went to jail with him. See, going to jail, I want to go back to what you started off, was a rites of passage for all of those like you. And you found truth in prison when you heard the voice of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan and ultimately Brother Khaled with the new Black Panther Party as a developer and a sustainer of the new direction. Because I happen to have been one of those young men that met Huey Newton, one of the premier founders of the Black Panther Party, because when they had the courage to go to the State House armed with weapons and talk about developing programs for the young blacks out west, I knew that he was special. I met him here in Chicago personally. So I'm not going to ever tell you things that I read. I'm going to tell you what I know so that you would be able to quote me as one that spoke truth to you, because I want you to speak truth to all of the youngsters coming, hearing your voice, not what you believe, but what you know. So that was the beginning of me connecting to Dr. King, because then I knew it was fashionable to learn how to speak well. It was fashionable to learn how to articulate history. But more than that, it was fashionable to connect to God. And that's been my foundation that I've been standing on, Brother sa.neter.
All right. Speaking of black revolutionaries who spoke about Huey P. Newton, Dr. Martin Luther King, speaking of black revolutionaries, would you please speak to us about the impact the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him, had throughout your walks of life?
That's why I started with his family, his fleshly family. His brother and his sister-in-law lived across the street from me in Chicago. And his nieces and nephews, Sadar, Farad, James, we all grew up together. Even though it wasn't fashionable at that time to be a Muslim, they represented dignity and class and a difference. And so the messenger had such an influence in the neighborhood that I grew up in that all of the strong brothers and sisters wearing the bow ties and the white shirts that you were talking about earlier naturally stood out. And so from the very beginning of my growth and development, he was part to this day of the foundation that made me become the man that I am today. Because I met Minister Farrakhan when he was rebuilding the nation. And I went to hear him speak in Chicago at the Institute of Positive Education when he first came back. after the nation had fallen. And I didn't know him at the time. And at the end of his presentation, I went up and introduced myself. He said he had never met a Hebrew before. And the next day, Anwar Sadat was visiting Jerusalem and meeting with Menachem Begin. It was the same day that the minister and I met, and I said to him that day that you and I are changing history with this meeting. We're bringing the two brothers back together, Ishmael and Israel, the sons of Abraham, and restoring back to our people a real legitimate connection with God. Because I had went to Jerusalem. When I say I don't mean me, just the individual. I mean us as a collective, as a people. And the NOI, the Nation of Islam, and the NOI, the Nation of Israel. I told him, as of this day, we're going to be one family again. We're not going to be the Hebrews and the Muslims. We're going to be family. And so, to this very day, not only is he my brother, he went to Jerusalem with me and for me. And so did Khalid. Khalid brought Minister Farrakhan up there to meet the brothers and sisters there. And we, to this day, are family. So I want you to know, I'm not just saying family to you in a generic way, but I'm reconnecting you with your land, your language, and your culture of God. So the messenger made this happen. This meeting here is Elijah Muhammad. You heard him through Khalid and the minister, and I heard him directly from his family members. So I give all honor and credit to the messenger. And as we talk over the next day or two, you'll see the connection in so many different ways. So I just want you to know that this meeting between you and I is a beginning of the rebuilding of the divine family. So, Brother sa.neter, thank you for coming.
Man, I appreciate that. Thank you, sir. Why do you think so many other Hebrew Israelites, such as the Messianic Hebrews, the brothers that you may see in the street, I don't want to mention no names on nobody. That's what, you know what I'm saying? That's why I say the Messianic Hebrews.
I got you.
The brothers you may see in the street. Why do you think they don't accept the continental Africans as their people like you and the brothers in Dimona do?
You see, one of the things that I learned is a work by Carter G. Woodson called The Miseducation of the Negro. They've been miseducated. Mm-hmm. You know, they think they know. I went all around the world talking to every possible Hebrew, Jew, black Muslim, regular Muslim that I could, to listen, to see what make them believe or think what they do. And I found out that they was just passing on what they had heard. They didn't do no research independent of it. When I went back to Israel, Brother sa.neter, and went to Jericho, Jericho is listed as one of the oldest cities of continued habitation in the world. And the people in Jericho look just like you. It's 10,000 years, the sign says.
That's right.
And when I saw the people that looked like me, it was no matter of me saying, black people is the foundation, da-da-da-da-da. I had went to see. I went to check it out. So then when I began to hear about black people being the original man, I could verify that I went personally myself. When I heard about Nelson Mandela, I didn't just read about him. I went and met his daughters and his wife Winnie to get the real straight history from her while he was in prison. When I heard about Ghana, I didn't just read about Ghana and Kwame Nkrumah. I went to Ghana and began to meet with the kings, the queens, and the people of West Africa. I went to what they call the slave castles, and I took the minister through the door of no return. I called it the door of return because we were there when the nation held its Savior's Day in Ghana, West Africa, and I was right there with the minister when President Rollins was hosting him and the Nation of Islam. So these are the kind of firsthand things that I can tell you about because I've been in the room. I've been in the rooms so that you will know that I'm not just telling you what somebody told me, but what I've experienced personally. Please go right ahead.
Yes, sir. Powerful information right here, man. How and when did you achieve the title of Prince Minister International Ambassador of Demona?
That's a good question. When I went to Africa, and every time I would meet an African leader, I was given a card called Plenipotentiary Extraordinary. And that raised a question in my mind. How do you become plenipotentiary extraordinary? When I found out it means he that has the ability to make decisions right on the spot. And you don't need to check with anybody because you are a sovereign.
Yes, sir. Teach.
And I recognized that no man took me to Israel. No man taught me what I knew. And I don't mean no man didn't teach me, but it was the Spirit that gave me the discernment of what I was hearing, so that even though I met great men and women over my period, I knew how to separate what they were saying from what the Spirit was revealing to me. Because when you start telling me about you, I heard the spirit of sa.neter. I didn't just hear the man they called sa.neter. I heard why you protected those 5 women plus mom. But I also understood why you heard the voice of Louis Farrakhan, not the man, but the servant of Almighty God, who was a servant to his people. And you heard that. Well, that was spiritual. That wasn't a religion. Your growth after that continued to elevate you in consciousness and study. So I want you to know that's how I became Ambassador Extraordinary Plenipotentiary, is because I have the ability to have been able to hear the voice of God
What has been your biggest challenge in taking on that position?
That sons and daughters like you would believe that they can achieve it as well. Because most of us would ask in the early days, who made you a prince?
Right, yeah.
That's their favorite line.
That's the favorite line, yep.
And I would say, God. But I didn't know how to explain God made me a prince. I just knew how to say it at that time. I know how to explain it now. Because I could not have done or been able to achieve what I've done over all of these years without that power that made me a sovereign. I touched on that I was facing 365 years in the federal prison system. And I didn't tell you that complete story. But what happened, Brother sa.neter, is that I had been infiltrated by those spies that they send in to self-destruct movements of strong black men and women. And so they sent a lawyer to me who had credentials among, quote, the revolutionaries of the time. And I took him on as my lawyer because he came and said, how you gonna be a revolutionary and you using white lawyers? I said, because y'all don't study law. That ain't what y'all do. You just say you're a lawyer.
Right.
But you don't understand the essence of law, of why it looks one way and you can do another thing. And I said, but since you came to see me, I said, if I need a criminal lawyer, I'll come get you. And I did when they arrested me. I fired my original lawyer, who was Jewish, to take on this black lawyer who said he was a revolutionary. Only to find out that, listen to this, 2 weeks into the trial of the century, he told me to fire all the lawyers and he would handle the case. I did that. And we went pro se, meaning representing ourselves. My trial was longer than Watergate. My trial was 10,000 pieces of evidence against me and over 300 live witnesses coming in to testify. Every day at the prosecutor's table was 3 Secret Service men, the DC police, 3 U.S. attorneys, every day. And we won that case. That's why I can tell you that God did it. And I don't mean religion. I'm not that smart. We weren't that smart. We didn't have any money.
Now, the case you're talking about, this is not the one that's in Zimbabwe.
Oh, no, Zimbabwe was a piece of cake.
All right, I want to get to that. That's I was like, oh, man, is he getting into the question I got right here?
Yeah.
You know, so I want to make sure.
No, this was 1985.
Okay. You met a lot of people in your life, brother.
Oh, yes, sir.
Man,
Yes,
powerful.
sir. Yes, sir. Not only did I meet them, I knew them.
Right.
See, when we talk about revolutionaries, you're talking about the great Robert Mugabe. Go right ahead.
The reason why I didn't want to stop my father, the flow of such a beautiful conversation, but my father has so much history, so much knowledge inside of him that he's going to give you continuously. But I want to take a quick second to emphasize the case of 85. My father did not say it was the greatest court case ever held in the appellate court of the United States of America. Nobody tells that story. There is no Netflix documentary on it, though it should be. He was facing the only black man at the time, the only non-mobster or gangster to face RICO and RICO conspiracy charges. The original indictment gave him a 364-year life sentence. He was further convicted on 30 years to life. Now, the powerful thing about this, the powerful thing when he says that God, that spirit, that internal truth that would not let him quit, that allowed him to persevere. The reason why this is so important because my father, as soon as he got out, met my mother, married her, and gave birth to me. So that spirit is inside of me. So this is my life story as well. The brothers
from the Nation of Islam. She heard me speak on Father's Day at the Final Call building here in Chicago. Her and four of the sisters came by the restaurant. We have a restaurant in Chicago to meet me personally and tell me how impressed they were. I find out that her birthday is May 1st and my birthday is April 30th. So she invites me to her birth celebration. I had not been with a woman in 5 years. And when I met her, she was so virtuous and so beautiful at the same time, and so smart. And so I meet her, and the rest is history. Because she was so significant in my life, because she brought together the two nations, the Nation of Islam and the Nation of Islam. And I took her to Israel so that she would see the work that I was doing and began to develop for her. Now, he hasn't told this part of it. His mother told him why she named him Yusuf. Share that story.
Yes, sir. This is going to go into why I brought up the piece about the incarceration. And it shows the power of my father's integrity. Now, when he got convicted on 30 years, it was him, 30 other brothers and sisters, correct? Yeah. And they all were convicted at this time. He told the brother, and my wife is over there, it was her father. He said, we'll be out in 9 months. He looked at him and said, you crazy. We just got convicted for 30 years. That's the end. We finished. He said,
never getting out.
He said, we ain't never getting out. He said, we'll be out within a year. Now, that's important because they didn't have a lawyer. They're representing themselves. They keep switching the jurors every time that they had affiliation or affection for the story, and it seemed as if it could be a hung jury, they switch them out. To the final case when they got convicted, they had one more retrial. One appeal came to him, one brother on that jury said, no, the prince is innocent. We can't allow you to convict him. Now, my father admitted to the charges, but he said, hey, you're not going to charge me as a petty criminal. You're going to charge me as a revolutionary, just like you would charge those who threw the tea in the Boston Harbor, just like you would charge those who fought for the Union against the Confederates. All of your heroes you lift up, no matter what they do. I'm doing the same on behalf of my people. So if you're going to charge me, don't charge me as another thug that you try to paint our people to be, but you're going to charge me for the revolutionary that I am, the fighter for freedom. And that allowed him to get that case overturned, not just for himself, because of the integrity that he showed, but everybody who was on trial or anybody who had a criminal record that came out the Hebrew community. And that, the hearing, when they gave the verdict and they was released, the judge told him personally, he said, Prince Asiel, you go on and don't just represent the Hebrews, you represent all of humanity. Because what you shown here,
Federal judge of Washington, D.C.,
who was the most conservative,
saying this on the bench to me.
on record, the FBI prosecutor ended up becoming his personal friend. The FBI federal agent ended up becoming his personal friend, and the prosecutor ended up becoming his personal lawyer. I know that because I met him personally in Washington, D.C. He told me in front of my father, he said, if I was black and I knew what I know now, then I would have been on trial with him. So that had to be emphasized.
This is a man that was trying to send me to prison for 300 years. I hadn't seen this man in 19 years. When I went to see him, he said, I've been wanting to talk to you. I said, I've been wanting to talk to you. I said, but why do you want to talk to me? He said, because I want to tell you what Yusuf just said. I said, oh. He said, yeah, everything that you said was going to happen, happened. And I want you to know that I know who you are. And I said to him, the judge told me that in the future, if I ever needed a lawyer, I should talk to you. Now, there wasn't no way for me to understand when the judge was telling me that the man that was trying to prosecute me for 4 or 5 life sentences would become my friend. I couldn't even process that. The FBI agent who had investigated and created the case read about me in the Washington Post. I had taken a group of black mayors over to Central Africa, Cameroon, and he read it in the newspaper, and they was trying to connect me with Marion Barry, who had been caught with the crack. Mm-hmm. He said, when I read that, I knew that that was not who you are.
That's right.
He said, so I called you to ask you to come see me. He said, had you stubbed your toe illegally on a crack in the sidewalk, we'd have put you back in jail. He said, we've been watching you for 19 years, and you've been standing on your integrity. I said, where do we go from here? He said, here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm in charge of FBI office in Foggy Bottom in D.C. If anybody want to know about your character, you give them my card and my phone number and tell them to call me. I'm agent-in-chief. I'm the chief agent representing the FBI. He said, because I don't want nobody thinking you're a petty criminal. I said, okay. One of the brothers who had not been back to America in 20 years, right after 9/11, got stopped in New York. He had left D.C. 20 years earlier, and they had an outstanding warrant. So when he came back, it showed up. Now, the judge had died by then. The FBI agent had retired, and there wasn't but one person left, and that was the prosecutor that knew the case. I tell the brother who was with me at the time to give him a call and tell him I want to talk to him. He said he hates us. I said, that ain't what the Spirit told me. I said, give him a call and see when I can come see him. He did that. He said, tell Prince Asiel I want to talk to him too. When I go see him, before I go into his office, Brother sa.neter, he says to me, everything that you said that was going to happen, happened. And I want to tell you, if I was black and know what I know today, I'd have been on trial with you. And can you imagine a prosecutor of 20 years, and his father was the head judge of the circuit court in D.C., telling me that? And so the reason I'm sharing this story is that I want you to know the power that's going to be given to you. Mm-hmm. And the faith that you have in the God that you heard is real. And you ain't got to worry. Because I'm here to verify we got power. Not by power nor might, but by the Spirit. And I know Mao Zedong say power comes through the barrel of a gun. That's not true. Power proceeds from standing on truth. And that's what I want you to stand on. And those that are connected to you. Don't let no liars be around you. Because one of the things that our God hates is a lying tongue.
That sounds like
You know, me and her, when you said that, we both looked at each other like this. You know why? You know why, Prince? Because I say that all the time. I say that when we be having battles, and when I say battles, like discussions, debates, when the Hebrews, right. And that's what I always say. I say, brother, remember the Most High said what he hate the most is a lying tongue.
And those who
that's
discord
yes.
among the brothers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful there, brother. Let me ask you, before I ask you this question, to go back into Zimbabwe, because I want to get that history. I want to go real quick back to Martin Luther King. What do you think is most misunderstood with Martin Luther King? Because today, hold on, let me finish. Because today,
I play Jeopardy so I can anticipate the question.
Because today, I'm saying, is that like this new generation and some of the Hebrews and some of the Kemetic brothers and some of the militant brothers, they look at Dr. Martin Luther King as a coward or as a punk.
Right.
But you knew him.
Right.
Was he a coward or a punk, or was he a revolutionary fighting a different battle, fighting differently from, taking a different approach from Malcolm X?
He was a general.
Okay.
That's the first thing. He was a frontline warrior. Went to jail, went to prison, sacrificed his family, his children, brought strong men and taught them how to use the weapon of truth. Wouldn't let them physically respond to the dogs, to the lies, to the white racists, to the black cowards, by saying you need to fight. Well, if you was going to fight, go fight. You ain't got to have nobody fight with you. That's why I did what I did. Mm-hmm. I didn't need no help to stand on truth. And I got protected every time, Brother sa.neter. And that's why I'm telling you this story. Not for you, but to know the God that you heard that day through the minister, through Brother Khaled, is real. I tested it for you.
That's right, Sabo.
That's right.
I tested it.
Yes.
See, I ain't telling the mighty Hebrew that you gave that name to years ago, that he could be trained as a prince by me. I'm talking to the spirit of me. I took him as my grandson so that he would know we got a spiritual bloodline connection, and I can transfer that to him. All I need him to do is to learn how to listen to truth. You go back to Zimbabwe. Let me tell you the backstory on that. Obama had just been elected president, and one of those internal spies had convinced me to come over to South Africa and go to Zimbabwe. He said, it's a great time to come over here, and we can generate resources. Because I trusted him, I went. And so while we're in Johannesburg, we run into the ambassador of Zimbabwe. Now, I got a black senator with me, a black congressman, a black state representative. And when they see him, they see me, he says, the president is upstairs in the hotel. Why don't y'all come up and say hello to him? Well, the senator had just met with the president the year before, and so he knew him. And I had went to Zimbabwe in '82 when they got their independence, and so I knew about the history because he had spent 16 years in prison, President Mugabe.
You met Robert Mugabe?
Yes. And so when we go up, one of the brothers asked him, how many African Americans can we bring to Zimbabwe? He said, we won't start counting until we reach 40 million. And as you know or may not know, Zimbabwe is one of the most mineral richest countries in Africa. Number 2 in diamonds, number 3 in coal, number 1 in gold. They got a vein of platinum that runs 2.5 miles deep and almost 800 kilometers long. And he said, whatever land that y'all settle on, whatever is under the ground belongs to your people. He said, I also want you to build a city for the African in America to come here and teach our people how to fight at a higher level. But the spy that was in the room came back and reported that to our enemies. And that's how they got the case. And the only reason I was on trial, Brother sa.neter, is because I was the only one that was not immune from visiting Zimbabwe because of sanctions. Because President Bush had put Zimbabwe on the sanctions because he was friends with Blair from England, who owned 1 million acres of diamond land in Zimbabwe. And so they didn't want me over there disrupting what they were doing with the Zimbabwe people and bringing African Americans out of poverty by putting them back on land that is rich with the natural resources of the Creator. So when they came and he gave his report about me, they figured that I was the only one that did not have the exemptions to talk because I was just a regular citizen. And they used the law that I didn't get permission to talk. And I told them, why do I need permission to talk to a black man, and I'm a black man, from a white man? And they knew then that it was a different kind of fight.
That's right.
So when I said that, and they brought me into federal court, the first thing they say, sa.neter, is that this is not about you. I said, who is it about? It's about all these strong black men and women that you know. I said, no. They never asked me to do anything illegal, and I haven't asked them to do anything illegal. So if it's about them, then you need to go get them. They said, no, we know you know what they're doing. So I don't know anything. They say, oh, hell. We didn't blew. Because now they don't have no case against me. But I know how they operate. They can't let me go. They held me 2 days before they booked me. Now, I wasn't worried. Now remember now, at this point, I'm 75 years old. And they telling me I'm getting ready to do 30 years in prison. I said, you didn't scare me at 39 years old. So I didn't live longer than I thought I was going to live at 75.
That's right, son.
So it ain't a matter of me being afraid. So when they heard that, I realized then that it was going to be a different kind of fight. Because they had accomplished what they had wanted to, and that was to run my picture on the front page of the newspapers and run the story across America that any black person connected to Mugabe was going to be in trouble. But when they realized that I was no punk or coward, none of the men that they tried to get me to set up ever stopped talking to me or turned against me, ever. And so I knew then, again, the power of this God. Because normally, the lawyers tell them, stay away from people on the case. Don't talk. They didn't do that with me. So I'm telling you, further confirmation of the power of the God that we're talking about. So I just wanted you to know, Robert Mugabe, may God be pleased with him and may give peace to his soul. Love black people. Love those who want to be free. Was in trouble with the British again because he gave the land back to the people. And they didn't like that. And so they knew that my connection with the God of Israel gave us a special power, and they knew that. And they knew that I was going to be able to transfer the insight of the God of Israel to Mugabe and his people in Zimbabwe. And that's what that fight was really all about.
Your experience, you were saying earlier how you became, an ambassador, an international ambassador. What was one of your, worst obstacles that you face being an ambassador in the continent of Africa?
Being black from America.
Say that one more time.
Being black from America. And what I mean by that, black men from America didn't have no standing nowhere in the world. So you would be challenged as to by what authority are you doing these things? You don't represent a land, a language, or a culture. You're a Negro. So the challenge became, how do I demonstrate that I'm not a Negro? I couldn't say I'm an Israelite because everybody knows that it's Jewish people that's in control of that land. So if I say that, they're going to say I'm a sellout. They're going to say that I'm sold out to the Jews and that I'm representing another doctrine, which goes back to the question you asked earlier about the Messianic. See, they waiting on a Messiah to come to deliver them, not knowing that they're the Messiah that they're waiting on.
That's what I'm talking about. Tell them something.
And that's the difference between me and them. I wasn't waiting on God. I was God in the human flesh. So when you read the 82nd Psalms, and it says, know ye not that ye are God's children of the Most High? And then the last part of that is that you shall inherit all nations. Not only did I believe that, I knew that. Because when I went to Israel for the first time, and they interviewed me, they asked me, now that you're in Israel, what job do you want? I looked straight in the camera and said, Prime Minister. I said, no, seriously. I said, you disappointed I didn't say bus driver, carpenter? I said, Israel needs a better relationship with the God of this land. And we've returned back to connect you back, if you want to that God.
I got another question. Absolutely. Okay. I know that. Okay. There you go. I know that you came from out of an Israelite organization known as The One with L.A. Bryant / Dr. Shaliak, yourself. And then you had Ben Ami with a Better Hebrew Culture Center on the southwest side of Chicago. Could you give us a brief synopsis of that connection with you, L.A. Bryant, and Ben Ami, and that transition over to the moon?
You see, Ben Ami was given the insight to take black people back to Africa and to take them back into Israel. Well, he didn't know prophetically how to do that. And so he was looking for the men who could help him do that. Nasi Shalig didn't have the experience with the political arena and the organizational skills that I had. So when I met him and he began to share with me who he was, and I began to share with him who I was, we became teacher-student. And so I studied under him directly for years. And almost every day for 2.5, 3 years, I studied the Bible, I studied history, and I studied prophecy so that I would know. So that when Ben Ami came back, he heard about us out of Philadelphia. And when he came to Chicago, I was in Prince Shalig, had a print shop at 43rd. And I was the man that Ben-Ami met with Rakameen, Prince Rakameen. And that's how we got started. And I brought him out to Prince Shalig's house that night to hear what Ben-Ami's story was. And when we heard it, I knew that Ben-Ami was special, because on the way out there to see Prince Shalig, I asked him a question. Have Brother sa.neter seen my video that they did?
No.
Yusuf, we'll get it to him.
Yes, that'd be nice.
You go on this video, I asked Ben-Ami a question. How do you know it's time? Because Brother sa.neter, all of the brothers were saying at that time, we're waiting on the ships of Tarshish to come and take us back to Africa. Or we're waiting on the Messiah to take us back. But that was not resonating with me. I didn't know how I was going to get back, but I did. Now, the reason I share that with you, going back to that question about the Messianic Hebrews, you find all of them are waiting for somebody to come and get them. Mm-hmm. You have to free yourself. Bob Marley got that song, got to free yourself from mental slavery. None of us can change the time. When I realized that we can change the time, because it's already been set in motion, all we got to do is apply what we know. And that's what I've been doing. So.
I have a couple more. I said, Stevie Wonder.
What about him?
Okay. I know from the information from the elders, they were saying, if I'm not mistaken, his nanny or somebody was
Detroit.
a part from Detroit and wound up going to Demona.
I met him in 1973 when she used to take care of little Stevie. And she went to Israel with me and her husband. Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely. Because I seen Stevie Wonder visit over there to Demona.
Stevie to Israel and performed in Israel. Yeah, right. I took Barry White, the Neville brothers, Whitney and Bobby. We've been pushing.
That was all with them. Absolutely.
So I ain't been ashamed to lift up us as a people. Yeah.
Last question. I know over there in Demona, we had the Kingdom School of Holiness, which transformed into the Akbar Brotherhood School, and we also got the School of the Prophets Institute. One of the things that you were saying was, when you was amongst these heads of states, you were saying, how could I be such and such if I don't have land, culture, language, et cetera, et cetera. In Demona, from which y'all brought forth, we can see now land, language, culture, et cetera, et cetera. Could you give us the beginnings of that and how you was effective in that experience of what we see today?
Yeah. What I want to do, though, is put a pin in that, and we'll pick that back up, because that's
a whole another story.
It's another story that you need to know, so that it ain't just like a question.
Okay.
It's like, I want to draw a picture with my words so that you'll know the power that you're capable of generating and the solution that you're capable of accomplishing. So that's why I'll talk about that in the next phase of our conversation. Because what I want to do now is sort of bring it to a close.
Yes, sir.
So that I don't wear you out, and we don't wear out.
And we don't wear you out.
Right.
Because I know you can go, man.
Yeah, because I got to get up early in the morning to do some things. But I'm so honored to begin this conversation with you. And I look forward to the next day or so to continue the dialogue.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hallelujah.
All right, man. I want to say thank you for allowing us into your beautiful home. And me taking this back to New York to share with the people.
Right.
I mean, I should have been here a long time ago. You know, you're such a beautiful and loving spirit. It's easy to love you. I love you, sir.
I love you too, my
Yes,
son.
sir. Yes, sir.
Believe me, I do.
See, and I'm right there with Dr. John Henry Clark.
Yeah.
I missed the interview with Dr. John Henry Clark.
Yeah.
But I got Dr. Ben, Amos Wilson, Ishaka Musa Barashango.
That was a good brother.
I've been to all
Rest
of
in
them. I've been
peace.
to all of them. I still go to Dr. Linda Jeffries' house, Professor James Smalls.
I know all that.
I know.
Did you ever
They know I'm here.
Did you know Queen Mother Moore?
No.
Okay.
I never got to meet Queen Mother Moore.
Okay, she took me to the UN, and we did a lot of things. We'll talk about that too.
Yes, that'll be good. I'll be back tomorrow because I wanna catch your son here.
Absolutely.
And Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, he told us so many stories of Queen Mother Moore.
Oh yeah.
When they tried to stop her from speaking, they tried to stop the people from speaking.
Right.
And Queen Mother Moore lifted up under her skirt and came out with the joint and said, "Speak, speak, speak, family." And then the brother said, and as I was saying, I'm speaking. You know, he was speaking because they came up in there trying to shut them down from speaking.
Right.
And Queen Mother Moore stood up on the chair, pulled out her joint, and told him, "Yo, speak. You can speak." And he kept on speaking. I mean, that was powerful.
I met her at a Pan-African conference in San Diego. It was called by Amamu Baraka in 73. And she heard me speak, came up, introduced herself to me, took me to LA. 3 women. She told me that she had written with Garvey and took me to a black publisher named Alexander. I lived in his home in Baldwin Hills, which was the black part of the socialites of LA. And she became one of the greatest women in my life. She, at that time, was in her 70s. So much.
Yes, definitely so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. All right. Close out.
I'm going to let the Prince close out on this one.
The Prince close out.
Absolutely.
Well, again, we thank you, Brother sa.neter, for this beautiful opportunity. I would be remiss in my duties and responsibilities if I don't acknowledge you coming out here, hearing Brother Mighty Hebrew's word, and acting on it. My father didn't finish the response that Ben and me said when he posed that question, how do you know it's time? His answer was, because we're doing it.
Doing it.
And that's what we're doing right now. As you see my family here, you see the brothers and sisters that soldiering with us, you see the reality of all of our efforts coming together. It's a convergence based on truth. And so this is a special time, brother. Like you said, you're taking back not just an interview, not just a conversation, you're taking back power. You're taking back might that is concrete and verifiable. So again, I thank my father for his life, his service, not just for me as his son, as his student, as his protege, but for all of our people, because we know that his story is not just for the people's edification, but for their application. You know what I mean? If they use that strength, that fortitude that he displayed and that he continues to display, we can change this thing overnight. So I thank you again, brother, so much.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate you.
Absolutely.
All right. Peace. I'm back.
Oh, yeah. sa.neter. know better than all consciousness info. sa.neter TV7. You keep it hot 24/7. You got that Black Wolf 102. sa.neter TV2. Yeah.
You are now inside sa.neter Studios, the house of consciousness production, Black news presentation.